There's a strange kind of exhaustion a lot of us are carrying right now. It's not physical tiredness, it is soul tiredness. The kind where your calendar is full, your phone won't stop buzzing, your brain feels like 20 tabs are open all at once. And somehow, even after doing 1,000 things, you still feel behind. Because we live in a culture that rewards exhaustion, right? If you're busy, people assume that you matter. If you're overwhelmed, people just assume you're successful. If you're constantly producing, grinding, answering emails, fixing problems, serving everybody, and staying on, people clap for you. And honestly, the church can accidentally baptize that mindset too. We celebrate the most people. We celebrate people doing the most. The ones always volunteering, always serving, always helping, always running, especially in place. And hear me clearly. Serving matters. Faith should, right? Faith should move us into action. Love should produce fruit. But here's the danger in this. You can be doing things for Jesus while completely neglecting being with Jesus. That's the tension sitting inside this story in Luke 10. Jesus walks into the home of two sisters, Mary and Martha. Martha gets to work immediately. Mary sits down at the feet of Jesus and listens. Before long, Martha is frustrated. Anybody would be, right? It's not because she's lazy, not because she's sinful, not because she hates Jesus. No, she is frustrated because she's doing good things all alone. Does that sound like anybody you know? But I want to let us listen to the text. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. That word distracted here is important. It literally means pulled away. Martha isn't evil, she's pulled. Pulled in one too many directions. Pulled by expectations, pulled by responsibility, pulled by pressure, pulled by the need to make everything work. Man, if we're honest here, some of us know exactly what that feels like, right? You wake up and guess what? You're already behind. You're already anxious. You're already thinking about what you didn't get done yesterday. Even when you stop moving physically, your mind just keeps sprinting. Some of us don't know how to rest anymore because productivity has become who we are. It's become our identity, right? If we're not accomplishing something, we feel guilty. If we sit still too long, we feel lazy. If we slow down, we feel unimportant. But Jesus never said, "Come to me, all who are efficient and high performing." No, he said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Martha's problem wasn't service. Her problem was that service had become more important than presence, and that happens so easily. You start serving your family so much that you stop actually enjoying them. You work so hard to provide a life that you forgot to live one. You get so busy building ministry that you stop spending time with God, the ministry that is supposed to point toward God. And here's the sneaky thing about distraction. It's not bad things, right? It's just good things in the wrong place. That's why this passage might hit us a little harder. We just completely ignore it. Because Martha's distraction looked responsible. She was cooking. She was prepping. She was preparing. She was hosting. She was serving Jesus. How could that be wrong? And honestly, if we walked into that room, we'd probably compliment Martha first. "Man, look how hard you're working, Martha. Good job. Look how much you're doing. You're just carrying the whole load in this household right now." Meanwhile, Mary's just sitting there. But Jesus says something shocking here. "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing." Hold on. Did you catch that? Many things versus one thing. That's the battle of our lives, right? Because the world trains us to chase many things. More money, more approval, more achievement, more status, more productivity, more noise, more hustle, more, and you guessed it, more. And Jesus says there's only one thing that actually matters here, guys. Presence, relationship, communion with Him. Now, Mary chose to sit at the feet of Jesus, not because she didn't care about responsibility, but because she understood something that Martha forgot. Jesus did not come primarily looking for workers here. He came looking for disciples. And discipleship starts by sitting before it even before it begins. Sitting before it starts serving. That's hard for some of us to hear because we've built our lives on motion. Some of us are terrified of the silence because silence forces us to face ourselves. If we stop moving, we might realize how anxious we are. how lonely we are, how spiritually dry we are. So we keep moving, we keep scrolling, we keep working, we keep planning, we keep producing because busyness can become a coping mechanism, right? And eventually productivity becomes our idol. Not because work is evil, but because we begin trusting our output more than God's input. We start believing if I just do enough, just enough, and maybe, just maybe, I will finally feel worthy. But your worth was never supposed to come from what you produce. You are loved before you accomplished anything. That is the gospel. Before the disciples preached sermons, cast out demons, planted churches, or changed the world, Jesus simply said, follow me. Be with me, walk with me, know me. And here's what I love. Here's what I love. Jesus doesn't shame Martha. He redirects her. Martha, Martha. There's tenderness in that. That's not condemnation. That's compassion. Because Jesus knew her heart. I think he knows ours too. Whether you let him into it is another question. But he knows some of us are exhausted from trying to hold everything together. Some of us are carrying responsibilities that no one can see. Parents trying to provide, caregivers trying to stay strong, church volunteers trying to keep ministries alive. People juggling jobs, stress, bills, relationships, and expectations, right? And somewhere along the way, our soul started starving. Not because we stopped believing in God, but because we got too distracted to sit with him. And maybe I pray today, Jesus is gently interrupting your chaos. Not to pile on guilt, not to tell you to quit your job and disappear in the woods forever like a hermit. No, though honestly, a hammock and a quiet lake sounds pretty biblical to me right now. But to remind you that you are more than what you produce. God is not keeping score based on your efficiency. The kingdom of God is not built by frantic people running themselves into the ground or a wall. But sometimes the holiest thing you can do is just stop, sit, pray, breathe, listen, and be present. Because when you're always rushing, you miss things. You miss your family, you miss joy, you miss wonder, you miss the voice of God. And eventually, if we're not careful, we become spiritually numb, doing church without experiencing Christ, doing ministry without intimacy, singing worship songs, praising God while our hearts are just 1,000 miles away. That's why this story matters. Mary reminds us that the presence with Jesus is not wasted time. It's the source of everything else. You cannot pour from an empty soul forever. You can try. Good luck. Eventually, exhaustion catches up. Eventually, resentment creeps in. And I need us to notice this. Martha gets angry at Mary because burnout almost always makes us bitter towards people who rest. When we're overwhelmed, we start resenting people who aren't moving at our pace. But Jesus says Mary chose the better part. Not because work doesn't matter, but because presence comes first. You don't earn closeness with God through productivity. You receive it. And from that place, healthy service flows. Not frantic service, not anxious service, not performative service, but joyful service rooted in love. So let's start to wrap this up here because the enemy doesn't always need to destroy your faith. Sometimes he just keeps you distracted enough that you never slow down long enough to deepen it. If he can keep you endlessly busy, you can keep your spirituality shallow. And that's why this moment matters so much. Jesus is inviting us back to that one thing. It's not perfection, it's not performance, but presence. So what does that actually look like for us? It's going to be different for everybody in this room, listening to this, watching this, and I want to be honest with you. I'm not going to give you a 5-step productivity plan for being less productive. That would miss the point entirely. But I will say this. Presence with God, like any relationship, requires intention. It doesn't just happen because you mean well. It happens because you make a decision and you protect it. Now, for some of you, it means reclaiming your mornings before the phone takes you. Not scrolling before you pray. Not checking emails before you've said a single word to God or your spouse. That first reach, the one that happens before you're even fully awake, tells you a lot about where your heart is anchored. For some of you, that means taking today, Sabbath, seriously. Not as a religious rule, not as something to feel guilty about ignoring, but as a gift you've been refusing to unwrap for years. Now, God didn't rest on the seventh day because he was tired. Far from it. He rested because rest is holy. He built it into the rhythm of creation because he knew. He knew we needed permission to stop. I'm giving you that permission today. You guys have it. You have that permission. You've always had it. But for some of you, it means telling someone no for the first time in years, because you realize that saying yes to everything means being fully present for nothing. Your capacity is not infinite. You were not designed to be everything to everybody, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can actually show up fully for the things and people God has actually called you to do. Now, for some of you, it's as simple as a 10-minute walk outside where you actually talk to God out loud instead of just thinking vaguely in his direction, like, I'm just throwing out vibes, God. No, none of that. Or sitting in your car before you go inside and just be quiet for a few minutes. Or putting on worship music that you actually listen to instead of using it as background noise while your mind races through tomorrow's to-do list. None of that sounds dramatic, and that's the point. Presence with God isn't a program or a spiritual performance review. It is a relationship, and however that relationship looks for you, do it. And these relationships are built in the ordinary, quiet, consistent moments, not just the big ones, but you make time for what matters to you. And Jesus is asking, does he make the list? Because here's the truth. The world will always demand more from you, but Jesus offers something different. Rest for your soul, not because you earned it, far, far from it. Not because you finished your to-do list, no, but because you belong to him. So do not let what you do for God replace being with God. Because at the end of the day, guys, Jesus didn't die so you could become a machine. He died so you could come home, to sit at his feet, to know his voice, to live loved instead of endlessly proving yourself. And maybe today, in the middle of all the noise, in the middle of the hurry, in the pressure, Jesus is saying your name the same way he says Martha's. Softly, lovingly, tenderly, saying, come sit down for a while. And all of God's children said, Amen.